Hi, it's Ken from shop3d.ca. Welcome to another monthly webinar. Normally we have tons of hardware laid out for you, but today we're actually going to be doing something different. We're going to be talking about a new piece of software, which is AutoQuote3D.com, getting instant quotes for your customers. So my team will take you through the ins and outs of this program, and we might also call the co-founder of AutoQuote3D.com as well to get his take on why he created this piece of amazing software for you. So let's dive in.
Tired of testing files, juggling spreadsheets, and writing emails? Quoting 3D prints shouldn't feel like a chore. What if you could focus on the parts of 3D printing you actually enjoy? Introducing AutoQuote3D, a super affordable auto quoting and workflow platform built for your 3D printing service business. With instant, accurate quotes customized to your printers and materials, your customers get what they need in seconds through a sleek, easy-to-use interface that makes quoting to finalizing an order a breeze. Integrating AutoQuote3D is simple. Just drop one code snippet into your existing website and you're ready to go. Set your pricing rules once and let our smart algorithm handle the heavy lifting. You stay in control of the prices without spending time on manual calculations. The intuitive dashboard keeps projects moving smoothly, whether approving orders or tracking progress. Plus, with secure payment processing built in, you'll never have to worry about chasing invoices. Running a 3D printing on demand business just got easier. Switch to AutoQuote3D today and spend more time printing and less time quoting.
Hey, this is Michael from Shop3D, and today I'm here to show you AutoQuote3D and how it will work for your customers. So we'll start off here on the initial upload page. This can be added to your site either as an iframe or as a new page like this one. So here, for a customer, we're going to be able to upload our file and start a quote. This page here is where your customer will be able to select the different options for their print. So you can see here we have a number of different options for each of the technologies and a number of different technologies available. All of these are customizable and can be chosen by you. So for example, we'll start with an FDM print. Let's say we want it made out of ABS at 0.2 millimeter layer height, and we're fine with everything else. If we want to try a different technology, we can also just simply create a copy at the bottom here. Let's say we want out of SLA this time. So we can choose, again, material, thickness, and we'll make it slightly higher layers. Only color is gray. If we want to, we can also add more files, or if we're happy with everything, we can go to review. On this page, your customer will be able to double check everything, if they want to add another copy of something, see what the price ends up being for each of the options. They can also choose options such as if it's an urgent or a rush shipping, and then if they're happy with everything, they can check out. As you can see, it only took us about a minute to get through the whole process. So I hope that's given you a great idea of how easy AutoQuote3D is to use for your users. Next up is Ken with a bit more of a deep dive into how things work on the back end.
So Michael's taken you through the front end of the system. Now I'm going to take you through the back end to see how we get into the nitty-gritty details of pricing for your 3D prints. So let's get to it. Navigate to AutoQuote3D.com, and once you sign in, you're going to be presented with the dashboard. Here on the dashboard, you'll be able to see all of your statistics. I have a demo account right now, so it's not populated, but you can see how many quotes have been done. You can see your average order value, conversion rates, all the good stuff to run your business. This is going to be really critical once you start getting rolling on getting a lot of prints into your business workflow. On here, you'll also see quite a few headings up on the top as well. So we'll kind of go through them really quickly. You got your customer tab, orders, quotes, configuration, website, and settings. I'll go through them one by one fairly quickly, and so you can see how we can get everything set up. On your customer list, you'll see all of the customers that have logged into your system, gotten a quote, and how much they've spent. So in this window, this is where you're going to be able to manage your business and say, hey, who is my top customer? How much are they spending? When was their last purchase with us? And their information, so you can contact them. This is going to be really important for you to manage your customer base. Next, we have orders. Once someone has submitted a quote to you and approved it, it's going to come in through the Authorized tab. Now, everything above the Authorized tab are things that are getting canceled or not actioned, and everything below are things where we're going to start actioning and printing things out for our customers. I'll go through this in detail a little bit later. The next tab we have is quotes. This is where you're going to be able to generate new quotes for your customers, send them out, especially if you have a recurring customer that does not want to use your website to get a quote. If they just say, hey, print this file for me, that's when you'll import it into this tab and send it out to your customer. Again, I'll show you in detail how this works later. Configuration. This is going to be the meat and core of AutoQuote3D.com. We're going to be able to price all of our technologies perfectly in this tab, as well as set up support materials, urgency, and bulk discounts. So this is where pricing is going to be centrally located. Next, we have website widget. This is going to be an easy window for you to embed to your website. And there's just 3 options, either through an embed with button, direct link, or embed with iframe. And I'll go through this a little bit later with you as well. Finally, we have the settings tab. This is going to be where your company settings are located. Now, I have a demo account, so this is not populated right now, but this is where you can upload your logo, change your company name, your telephone number, and some other systems for setting up your AutoQuote3D widget on your website. So that's the rundown of the system for AutoQuote3D. Now I'm going to go through some of the individual sections with you. Now let's go through some of the most important parts of AutoQuote3D and how you're going to set up this system so that your customers can get instant quotes. First of all, let's talk about the website widget tab. In here, we've got 3 options to embed to your website. You can either embed with a button, so you can copy this code over to your HTML and it'll embed a button for you that someone can click and open the window to get a quote. Or you can go direct link, so if you want to paste this one to a photo or something like that, you can do that. And there's also iframe. Now iframe is really good because you actually don't leave the URL of your existing website. However, some devices such as iPhones or tablets may not have third-party cookies enabled, which will mean that this will not work properly. So our preferred method is still going to be the first one, which is going to be embed with button. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check out our settings tab. Here is going to be the settings for your business. So you can price it in your currency. Now, AutoQuote3D works with Stripe. We don't take any cut of your payments from your customers. So it's all going to go through Stripe and it's going to go to you. So you do have to set up your Stripe link here in the business settings. Once that's set up, you can take payments through Stripe. And Stripe is pretty much available all through the world wherever you want to use AutoQuote3D. The next thing you'll want to do is set up your currency, whether in Canadian dollars, US dollars, any dollars that is available here. There's a lot to choose from depending on where you are in the world and where you're going to restrict your shipping to. So you can select any country that works for you. The next, you can set up your shipping options. You can add pickup, shipping, express, any kind of option you'd like, and turn that on and off according to what you want to offer your customers. Finally, we have automation level. This is going to be one of the most important settings for AutoQuote because depending on how your business is set up, if you want it to be truly automated and accept every quote that comes through the door, you can go through auto. And this will basically accept everything and take payments, and all you have to do is just print. Now, we all know that sometimes printing can be a little bit more difficult or a little bit more custom, or you want to have some hands-on experience with your customers and take them through the process, then I would recommend assisted. So they can submit their files, they can see the price and get a quote, and then they can enter their card details, but you still have a chance to either approve or deny this quote. So if something doesn't look right to you or there's something wrong with the file, you can still turn this deal down and it won't charge the customer. Finally, we have manual. Manual is for customers who don't receive a ton of quotes, but want to have ultimate control over what they want to accept or not. So the customer can send their files to you and then basically request a quote, and then you can adjust the quote and send it back to your customer to your liking. So choose the automation level that's fit for your service bureau business. And for us, what makes the most sense is assisted, but you can choose any one that you want that fits what you needed to do. Finally, we have some overrides on the bottom. We have quoting limits. So sometimes we don't want to do parts over 100 or over any number. If you're a smaller service bureau, maybe you want to limit that to 20 pieces. So if you put it in here, it will make them do an RFQ, which means that you'll have a chance to update that quote before you send it back. Or you can send it back and say, hey, that's a little bit too much for our business. Maybe we suggest going with a lower amount. You can also set a maximum order price. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't charge more than this. It just means that it's going to go into an RFQ situation where you're going to be able to send the customer some feedback because maybe you don't want to take orders over a certain amount of money because it's too much for what you can possibly handle as a capacity. Finally, we also have minimum order price. Now, this happens a lot, especially for smaller service bureaus where they get someone who wants to print a small figurine, and that might be below the minimum price. And if that happens, you can put that minimum price threshold here, and if it's below this threshold, it can charge them a small order fee to bump up that extra labor. Finally, we just have some simple redirection of emails and contact phone number. And this is basically all you'll need to do is to set up your business aspect. Now, if you have a higher tier of AutoQuote3D, you can actually have other users as well. So this is very good for service bureaus that have more than one operator, where someone is managing the queue and someone is managing the money, for example. So you can add different users in here, and you can also customize the appearance of your AutoQuote widget so that it has your brand colors and your brand logo and everything you want to do to make sure that integrates well with your website. Now we're going to go over to the configuration tab. On the configuration tab, this is going to be the meat of how we price our prints to perfection. So there are 3 technologies available here, and there's actually also MJF as well, but it's going to be very similar to our SLS technology. Now, if you don't have all 3 technologies, for example, you only have FDM and SLA printers, you just don't add any build materials for SLS, and it will take that option offline. But if you do have all 3 technologies, what you want to do first is you want to specify your maximum and minimum printing dimensions for your printers. So if you have an SLS printer that does 200, 200, and 150, you want to put that here because this will limit what your customers can quote in terms of size for your printing technologies. That way they know that if they have a huge print, it's not going to fit on your SLS printer. So I'm just going to disable this first and we'll add high temp again. So let's go to add material. We're going to choose FDM because we're going to add a high temperature material. Material density 0.5 and submit. So once that happens, you'll see that we actually have a new high temp material here. If you want to find it, you can filter that out and select FDM and just filter those materials out. But we have a high temp material over here that we just added, and now we're going to edit it and add some colors. So let's just add sure, we'll add clear, and we can choose that. Now we have a clear material. You can actually add more if you'd like. Let's add black as well, so we have both options. And then layer heights, let's go with normal at 200 microns. So this is, now you have 3 basically parameters here where you're going to adjust the price. You have your curve threshold, which is if you want it to be exponential or logarithmic. So if you have a curve threshold of 1, it's going to be linear. It's going to get more expensive as the print gets heavier. If you have 1.5, for example, you can see that the curve starts curving up and it gets exponentially more expensive as the number of grammage in your print is increased. So you can see that it curves upward. So this is good if you want to incentivize smaller prints because as it gets bigger, it's going to be much, much more expensive. Now let's say we want to encourage bigger prints. We'll go under 0, so we can do a 0.7, and you'll see the curve go the other way. In this situation, as it gets heavier, it actually gets a little bit cheaper. So it depends on what technology you're using. So if you have, if you prefer doing larger builds for customers, then I would do a lower than 1 threshold. If you prefer to do smaller prints, especially for this material, high temp, which we'll do, I suggest doing higher than 1 so that it price is more expensive. You can also have a startup cost of 1, and price per gram is 0.7. So if we, and this is dollars, of course. So if we want to take a look at this right now under this configuration, at 100 grams with a $10 startup fee, it's going to cost us $185. Now, if that seems a little bit too expensive, then let's lower this, 0.5. And now it's $135. And as it gets more expensive, it gets quite a bit more expensive if it goes up to 800 grams and so forth. So you can really price it the way that you want by configuring these 3 materials as well as your layer height. So let's just go with this for now with the normal threshold, and we'll also do a rough at 350 And same curve threshold, and we can see 0.4, a little bit cheaper because we're doing larger prints, but we want to have a higher startup cost. So now this has a very different curve in terms of how much it's going to cost. And this will be very good to offer your customers in terms of different thicknesses. Finally, we have infill. So this is fairly simple. We'll do standard, and we'll do a 25%. And you can add up to, you can also add 100% if you want to offer solid prints. But this is how you're going to have a new material. Once this is done, you're going to be able to access this on the front end. Your customers will be able to choose a high temperature material and figure out how much it'll cost for their print. So it's as easy as adding that for your materials. It's also going to be the same if you're going to be doing SLA and SLS as well, except that the algorithm will slice those prints differently. So for this example, I want to show you something else. Now, sometimes for high temperature materials, you may not want to offer the full build volume of your printer. So if you have a fairly large FDM printer, so let's say a 350 by 350, and you don't want to offer a high temperature material like a nylon in that size because it's just too big and it's likely to warp, you can actually limit a particular material on its own despite the printer size. So for this material, for high temp, let's do that. Let's limit that to only a 200 by 200 by 200. And that way, just for this material, if someone selects high temperature, it's going to recommend them to choose a smaller build volume because it's going to give them an RFQ if it goes beyond those parameters. Now, you can see that in another material that I set up, high temperature here, that we have a support material, Aquasys. Now, support material, as you know, for FDM is fairly common, and there's lots of different support materials for different materials. So how are we going to set that up? It's actually very simple. We'll just go over to our support material tab. And here you'll be able to add different support materials. You can add, like we have here, PVA, breakaway, BVOH, Aquasys. These are very common support materials. When you add a new material, it's going to be just like as if you're adding a main material. In pricing, you're going to be able to set the density, and you're going to be able to set the 3 parameters to make sure that you can price that to perfection. So let's just do one right now. We'll just do PVA quick dissolve. Density, so we'll do 1.0. Curve threshold, let's say we want to disincentivize larger tons of support, which we want to do. So let's put a 1.2 curve on there, and it's going to be quite expensive. Let's do 1.2. Of course, that is very, very expensive at $1.20 per gram, so maybe we should reduce that a little bit. 0.8. All right. And we won't put a startup cost because there's already a startup cost in our main material. So let's go generate that. So we already have a new one here. It says unused because it's actually not paired with a material yet. But let's pair this PVA with our high temperature material that we just made. So the high temp one, I know there's a few here, but the one we just made is this one over here. Now normally you wouldn't be duplicating your high temperature materials, but this is a demo account, remember? So let's go ahead, and all you have to do is, if it's base, it's using the same material as a support. And right now we can go to PVA quick dissolve. So there we go. Now we have used for one material, and that's going to be your support material for high temperature. Of course, if that doesn't make sense and you want to use Aquasys instead because it's great for high temperature, then you would just come down here and select Aquasys. And when we do the pricing, it's going to calculate both Aquasys and your main high temperature material. Next, we have urgency. For our productions, you know, we don't like to make it too complicated, but if you want rush, or if you want super rush, or if you want 1-day turnaround, or if you want, I don't care when it's done, to extend that timeline and just fill up your queue, you can do that. So there's 2 ways to do it. There's dynamic and there's static. So either you do a static price increase, which is like $10, $20, or whatever, or you can actually add a dynamic one, which is a percentage. So if we want to do a rush, you can actually add I'll show you over here. So we'll say urgent, super fast, and it's going to be a percentage, so it's going to be dynamic. Let's do 1.2. So now that's a 20% increase on the price. So if someone needs it quickly, they're going to be expected to pay an extra 20% in premium. Now you can see that we actually have a negative here, and this is slow speed. So you can say, hey, within 20 days, we're going to get this done. And for people who are not in a rush, that might work really well for them. They pay a little bit less, and it's going to arrive to them whenever, and they're not in a rush for it. So that might be a good way to fill up your queue as well. So you can set your urgency settings in this window. Finally, we have bulk discounts, and this is very easy to set up. Depending on what technology you want to offer, you can set a quantity threshold. So if someone wants 10 prints of FDM, you can give them a 5% discount. We're going to give them a 10% discount, and we're going to add another threshold that if they do 20, we'll give them a 15% discount. So I think that's fair. We're going to save our changes, and now we have 2 materials where they can have different discount rates for bulk. Now you can set that up for each of your different technologies, or you don't have to set any if you don't want to. So you can just delete these if you want. The first one is default. So that's how you can configure all of your materials, support materials, set your urgency, and any bulk discounts you'd like to offer. That's going to be all of your pricing in one tab. And with this, you should be able to price prints exactly the way that you want it to for almost any customer using your widget. Now that we've set up our pricing to perfection, let's go over to see our orders and how to do a custom quote. So this is our demo account, so we had no orders come in, but you can see that there are a bunch of expired quotes here that you can go back into. You can actually download the files, you can actually refund the order or print this and so forth. Of course, this is an expired quote, so it never went through, but if you wanted to look at what quotes came in, you can definitely come through here, filter out the quotes that are available, and maybe even reach out to some customers and say, hey, you know what, we can actually have time to do this quote. Would you like to proceed with it? Now, most quotes that are authorized, that means someone submitted that quote within the specifications, are going to come into authorized. This is where you're going to review your quotes and say, yeah, you know what, I think I'm going to accept this one. And if you do, you're going to be able to go to invoiced, paid, and then start printing. As you move your orders through the queue from invoice to print to printing to shipped, it's going to email your customer. So that way, everything is automated. Your customer is being kept in the loop in terms of what stage their print is at all times as you move it through the stages. And once it gets shipped, for example, or once it gets ready for pickup, it'll send them a notice and they'll be able to come and pick up their print from you. Of course, once it gets completed, that's done. These are going to be your victory lap in terms of how many prints are completed for your customers. So it's fairly easy for orders. Now you're going to ask, well, what am I going to do if I want to do a custom quote for a customer and I don't want to just tell my customer to go onto my website and get a quote himself? That's no problem. We'll come over to the Quotes tab. Under here, we're going to do a new quote. And let's put your customer's email in and create. Here, you're going to be able to choose all of the options that we set up. So let's do a pickup for the customer, and we're going to do a rush. I mean, he didn't even have time to set up his own quote, so he's going to go for a rush and add that 50% premium to the charge. We're going to you can add an extra line item, actually. So anything custom. So if you want to add line item like bead blasting, you can do that here. Finishing, and let's set a price of $100. So you can add custom line items here as well. You can see that there's extra costs over here, $100 that we've added. This is bead blasting, it's already added here. And let's go add our model, add a file. We have our standard bulb that you can see here, and they wanted an SLS print. So it's going to default to our SLS materials. I think there's nothing much to change other than we want to change it to gray and 2 units. It's going to reprice that for us. It's going to be $159. That seems good. We're going to go to review. And now we're going to be able to send the customer this quote because we've already selected all the options and all of the specifications that the customer has requested. Also with our startup cost and any special line items that we've added. So you can now send the email directly to them. You can say, this is exactly what you requested, and send the email. Now, once they've received this, they can go ahead and authorize the payment, and we can you'll get an authorized order, and then you can start printing this order right away. So this is a way for you to do a custom quote for a customer, especially returning customers. If they're saying, hey, I just want to duplicate my previous order of 100 sets, you can actually duplicate that right here, send it to them, and proceed with printing. Now, I don't know about you, but we certainly get a mix of customers. We get customers that will go through the front end of our website and love to do everything themselves, but we also have customers who we've worked with for a long time that just says, hey, give me my last order. So while this is not a very automatic way of doing it, you can certainly customize and produce custom quotes for your customers and send them off to your customers in a very neat way so that you have everything on one platform. You'll be able to see all your either custom quotes or automated quotes that have been approved for your system right on AutoQuote3D.com. All right, so now you know how AutoQuote3D works. Let's talk about the pricing, and this is a really exciting part. It's very affordable. Let's go to AutoQuote3D.com, and then you're going to go to Choose Plan, and you'll be able to see the different tiers we have here. Now, it's a subscription-based software, so all you can do is choose yearly or go month by month. Now, let's just go with monthly for now. There's 4 tiers that we have. We have startups, recommended professional tier, service bureaus, and enterprise. So let's go through them. Now, if you do yearly, of course, you get 2 months free, so you get a little bit of a discount, but the prices are already extremely affordable. Starting with starter, we have $15 per month. So this is usually for customers who just got a new printer and they're like, you know what, my friends and family have been asking me for prints, and some people at school or at work have been asking me for prints. I just want to automate the process and get a few more customers. That's perfect for this customer. This user will be doing 50 quotes per month. There's no processing fees from us. There's 1 user seat for the software. And then of course there's email support and Stripe integration. This is, now 50 quotes, seems like a lot, but sometimes each customer might do a couple quotes at a time. So usually for startups that don't have a lot of business, this is a great starting tier at a very low price just to get your feet wet. Now, what we recommend is our professional tier, and this is for small businesses, small operators that may be 1 person but might have 10 printers in their home or garage or whatnot. In this perspective, you have unlimited quotes, so you can get as many customers, as many quotes as you can through the system, and you'll have 2 users, so you can also have someone else helping you manage prints on the system, and you get everything in starter along with your unlimited quotes. So this is what I would recommend for anybody who's treating it much more like a business and they want to increase their revenue and their number of prints. Now, Service Bureau is going to be for operations that are pretty serious. They might have an established location or 2, and that's why there's actually 2 business units. So you can set up either 2 separate locations with different materials and printers and setups, or you can set up a pickup location, or you can set up 2 different business units going to different markets. It's really up to you. For us, at Shop3D, we're using 2 different locations because we have our Vancouver showroom and we have our Mississauga showroom. And both of those showrooms have different printers on display and are available for printing. So we actually want the 2 different units. We have 2 different teams managing the materials and the different types of printers that are available there. So Service Bureau is perfect for us. You get, of course, up to 5 users per business unit, and of course, faster support from the AutoQuote3D team. And this also allows you to use SLS and MJF as well. Finally, we have Enterprise. Enterprise, you're pretty familiar with it. It's for operations that have more than 30 users required. So that's usually for institutions, organizations, huge businesses, or businesses that have a special requirement for us to customize the software for them. So Enterprise will have to be a quote, contact us for a quote depending on what you'll need us to help build out for you. Again, you can either go with monthly if you don't have a lot of volume and you're not sure if you want to continue it and so forth, or just go with yearly, and by this you save 2 months off of your subscription. So it's fairly simple, but if you need help on finding the right tier for you, definitely reach out to the Shop3D team. Shop3D is the authorized distributor for AutoQuote all over the world. So I thought it'd be interesting for us to actually reach out directly to the founder of AutoQuote3D. This is, of course, Felix. Felix, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction and tell us why you created AutoQuote3D?
Yeah, so I'm Felix. I created AutoQuote3D. I'm one of the founders along with Ken. And the reason I created AutoQuote3D is because when I was running my 3D printing service bureau uh, a while back now, I was looking for something like it, an instant quotation tool that wasn't insanely expensive. And the market is still like that. There's a bunch of instant quotation tools. They're all very expensive, at least in my opinion. $1,000 a month, $500 a month. I mean, I don't think that at that time I would have been able to afford it. I didn't see the value in the software that was available back then. And then, many years later, now that I have the tools, the experience, the knowledge on how to create some, a product that people actually want to use, I decided to go back to my roots, to 3D printing and create Article 3D.
So before you created AutoQuote3D, you said you wanted something like this. What were you doing before you got AutoQuote3D? Before we had this amazing tool to price prints, what were you doing before that?
What everybody else was doing. I was getting files on the email, downloading them, slicing them, giving people quotes, waiting for them to email me back saying, yeah, this looks good, this doesn't look good, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then eventually, once people were actually committed, you would send them a link and maybe you'd never hear from them. Maybe you do. Yeah, everything was very manual. You used like Excel sheets. Honestly, to be honest, I'm sure many people do this now too. But once I got enough experience, I just kind of looked at the part and I was like, yeah, this looks like $20. This looks like $50 because it just takes so long. And you never know if people are going to convert, especially if they send you, like small parts or something. And that's their first on 3D printing. Those people likely you'll just never hear back from them because they don't know the cost of 3D printing.
Yeah, that's a great point, is that a lot of quotes come in, but not all of them convert. And that's why I think we have that conversion metric on there. We want to see how close we get to getting more conversions. But without diving too much into that, tell me a little bit about who you've made AutoQuote3D for, because I know you've kind of made it for yourself. And honestly, for us here at Shop 3D, we use it all the time. But is there a broader audience that you've designed this for?
I think it's really designed for anybody in this business. There are different, tiers, starter, pro, professional, not professional, service bureau, and then enterprise. Depending on the size, you fit into one of those categories, right? The starter pack is, like $15 a month. It's really, that is really meant for somebody who wants to dip their toes in, maybe try it out without committing too much money. But even the pro plan is $50 a month. Like, what is that? 2-3 prints a month that cover that, and think about how much time you save. So it's really meant for businesses, individuals, maybe that want to start a 3D printing business, business that want to basically make everything more efficient, stop spending so much time on quoting. That's the number one thing with 3D printing businesses. Like, you spend so much time quoting and you never know if you'll get actually an order out of it. So that's who it's designed for. And of course, enterprise level, if you're a library or university, like a really, really big 3D printing business, you might want a more customized solution. And that's what that tier is for.
Yeah, I think I was. We went back back and forth for a little bit, talking about that lower tier at $15. First of all, it's an amazing price to just get a tool like this and to have all the access. But I think I think your inspiration was to just kind of get it to as many hands as possible because of the multiple uses that were available for everybody who basically does 3D printing. So I think that aggressive pricing strategy, really makes it affordable for everybody to use. And I think, for us, even if we weren't involved in this, it would be a godsend just to have a tool like this because it's something that we deal with every day, and it just takes the grind out of it. I wanted to ask you, now you didn't originally, do focus on software development in your previous career. So tell me a little bit about, developing a brand new product from scratch. I'm not a software engineer. I just know what I'd like to use and how it can help me. But tell me a little bit about your journey from going from 3D printing career to software development, and also, the story of how you created AutoQuote3D. How many versions did you make before you were kind of like, okay, I think it's ready?
Yeah, no, my journey was, mechanical engineering to, sales, like application engineering, sales, technical sales, things like that. And then eventually I decided, I think software was really my original calling. That's what I wanted to go to school for, but then decided, software engineers, they sit on their laptop all the time. They never get up and do stuff. And mechanical engineering, it's going to be different. So that's why I went into that originally. But it turned out that's not the case. You still sit on the computer a lot. But you don't get to see your work materialize in a good pace. If you're in a manufacturing plant, it takes time to make parts. It takes time to get things moving through the pipeline, get approval, get funding, and all those things. But with software, the only thing that software costs these days is time. So, and I love making things, I love building things, and seeing that like instant gratification when you make something and it works. It's like, it's just so nice. I'm sure many people relate to that. So that's how I got into software, or rather back into software. I was already into it, always into it. But AutoQuote3D was always in the back burner of my mind, or, a version of it. And really, it's really started like 3-4 years ago. I started playing around with it, seeing like, can I do it? Is it feasible? Like, what is the price like to run the infrastructure? But at the time, I really didn't have the experience or the knowledge to really get it executed. But now I do. And AutoQuote really started with like a very simple proof of concept. It's like, can I upload a part on a web browser and slice it and get back a price? That's the core offering of AutoQuote3D. And the answer was yes, I can. Is it fast enough? It is fast enough. Can I make it faster in the future? Yes. And that was really the proof of concept for me that kind of ignited the whole thing. And I'm really a strong believer that like, if you make software that you would want to use yourself, or really anything that you would want to use yourself, a service, software, whatever, you just have a lot more kind of fire in you to solve the problem, and you have an opinionated way to do it rather than trying to solve a problem that you have no business solving. So yeah, that's how it came about. And really, versions wise, it's just like constant iteration, making it better, continuously better. And I guess to answer your last question, like how did I know it was ready for the market? I didn't. We talked in those early stages, and you saw how it was. There was like a gazillion feature requests, a gazillion things that didn't work exactly how they're supposed to. So it's just constant iteration, listening to feedback from you, from other customers, and just making it better every day. That's the plan.
That's an amazing story. And I just want to correct you there. It doesn't just take time to do software development. It also takes talent. Otherwise, I would be a programmer too. But no, you got to have a very good grasp of systems to design something where it makes sense for everybody to use. But thank you for that answer. The next question I have for you is, you talked a little bit about how you love getting feedback and then reiterating so that it becomes a better and better product. Tell me about some of the feedback that you've procured from our existing client base right now, and maybe an example that you have that kind of changed the way you looked at the software, and maybe you've implemented a new feature based on some of that feedback.
I think the most influential feedback was very early on. Before people could even buy it or pay for it, we kind of went out there, and just displayed it to some people that might be interested. And I showed them how it works, and everybody was like, yeah, this is nice. I can see myself using it, which was, it's good. But their number one problem is that it was fully automatic, which is funny because that's the goal of AutoQuote3, to fully, automize. Is that the right word? Whatever. To make it fully automatic, to get quotes out to clients and get orders through the pipeline and make money, right? Just save you time so that you can focus on something else, marketing, whatever it is. But people said, no, full auto does not work because I don't want to accept every job. I want to look at every job and make sure that I can print it, that there's no issues, the files are good, not corrupt, and all those things. And that completely shifted how AutoQuote3D worked. Instead of going fully automatic, now there's like a step where people put in their credit card, and then it goes into this like, let's call it like an escrow stage, waiting for the business or the operator to review the part, and then they can choose to decline or accept it, right? Which now that it's implemented and now that it's been told to me, it's like totally makes sense. Even back when I was doing the 3D printing business, I will look at the part and then decide if I can print it, if it's even printable, if it even needs to be printed. Right. So it's like a make sense situation, but when you have blinders on and you're just trying to make something work and do the best you can, you maybe don't consider all the options. So that was like a big shift in how AutoQuote3D works. So now there's like 3 different levels. There's like full auto, there's like assisted, which is how I described it now, and there's also fully manual, where like it's basically just a really opinionated form for 3D printing. So that was a big feature. But then there's a lot of feedback that comes. Yeah.
Sorry about that. For operators of 3D printing businesses, I think that's the first thing we think of when we get even a potential order is what caveats are there in printing this print? Is it time? Is it material? Is it size? There's just so many caveats that we automatically think about that I think it did drive that assisted feature. And honestly, that assisted feature is perfect right in the middle between manual and assisted, at least for us, and how it's tuned. Thankfully, we kind of came up to that conclusion that was a really good fine middle point between everything. But it still got all the great automated features of like emailing your customers and giving them updates. I think those are the things where it can absolutely be fully automated, and it is, because those are kind of cookie cutter email updates for customers that we have to do on a manual basis if we didn't have this. But we don't have to do that anymore. We don't even think about that. It's just automatically going to do that.
Yeah. And like just kind of a little bit more about the feedback and how the software improves every day is there's literally a big feedback button on the back end for people to put in their feedback. And it's not used very, very often. Like a lot of people just have my email. They just email me. Sometimes I get them calls with the customers just to see how they're doing, see what they like, don't like, hate, love. And like small things come out of it. It's like, okay, so we can add materials, we can set the print dimensions, the maximum print dimensions. But what if I have like ABS and I don't want to print 1,000 by 1,000 by 1,000 prints? I don't want to accept those. I want to limit for just that specific material, the print sizes, right? So now that's a feature that's implemented, right? And usually it's pretty quick, like somebody kind of utters a feature or a request that makes total sense, and within a week it's out there. So that's how we continuously just make the software better. And, it's not like when we add features, we jack up the prices. That's not the case. We are going to probably keep these prices for, some amount of, maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years. But even then, the infrastructure, and I guess I want to touch on that. Like the core thing for AutoQuote3D is to remain very, very, affordable for anybody, no matter if you're like a tiny business of one person or like a huge business, right? We want to make sure that like you're not thinking twice about automating your 3D printing operation. Like we want to make sure that it's just an assistant that helps you get things done, and an assistant doesn't have to be thousands of dollars a month, which is the case right now in the industry. So we'll keep adding features, and maybe there's going to be more tiers or some add-ons that some people will pay more for, but the core offering will remain in that range that we have now.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important and fundamental to kind of your founding principles when we first spoke about this project. And I think, not only is it going to help everyone else, but if you think how to start a 3D printing business, you literally just need a 3D printer, a website, and the widget. And you can pretty much start getting your feet wet and becoming a very professional business for 3D printing service. And I think that's something that has been missing in the industry for a long time, because we've been selling hardware for such a long time that sometimes we don't think about the software component. And the software component is what you need to kind of run the business, from a pricing, collecting of information, prospecting, processing payments, and then ultimately to workflow development and delivery. So I think, that really rounds out everything we need.
Think about how many things you just listed that I think AutoQuote3D solves. A lot of them. Like the mental overhead of running a business is pretty huge, right? And getting a software that is specific for a use case, in this case 3D printing, is just a no-brainer, right? Like if you can automate quoting, if you can automate like order tracking, if you can automate like all of these back-end things on a simple web interface, you don't have to think about any of it anymore. You can just focus on doing two things: is printing things for people, making sure that you provide really good quality parts, and two, like marketing yourself, right? And spending that time and effort, like talking to your customers and maybe spending some money on ads. Now that you have the time to do so, and you're not like trying to juggle like Excel spreadsheets and emails and all these things and tracking, what stage each order is in and informing your customers. A lot of times, like that specific point, informing your customers, like totally like glossed over. And you have like businesses that take your parts, take your money, and then like 5 days later, it's like, oh, your part is ready. But like you don't know what happened in between in those 5 days. You don't know when it printed. You don't know when it got quality controlled, when it shipped. You just get an email, or maybe not even that. You just get your part in the in the mail. So I think that constant interaction with the customers is something that was also worked into AutoQuote3D in a meaningful way.
And I think even though that starter package is only $15 a month, I think it's very, very understated, because if you were a single owner operator of a business, you don't have any other time other than printing, basically getting your printers continuously printing to make money, to do all the quoting back and forth and keeping your customers appraised of the situation. So I think without that tier, a lot of single owner operators would not be able to run as proficiently and efficiently as they can with just the software and the hardware, the starter tier for AutoQuote3D. So I think that is one of the biggest things in my mind that is a game changer for the industry, where now we can have a single owner operator be fairly efficient running several machines and running the quoting system, prospecting while they're sleeping, or running the machine and still taking orders.
Yeah.
All right. I want to not keep you too long, but I want to get to a couple of just two last things, which is you've talked about all the upgrades you've improved. And honestly, I've seen a tremendous amount of upgrades since we first started working on the system. But what have you got for a sneak peek into the future?
Sneak peek in the future, the main thing right now is speeding up quoting times. Even 20, 30, 40 seconds for a part may seem very fast, but customers rarely have any patience. And we know this. The first one to reply to an email for a quote probably wins. And if you are losing your customers because they're waiting 20 seconds and they're leaving the page, then you have to follow up with them. We don't want that. So number one is reducing the quoting times to, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 50% faster. That's top of mind right now. The other things would be, we don't have a very straightforward way to apply discounts right now. That's another thing that we're working on. Really complex discount structure, first time customer discounts. If you are like a really loyal customer, you have a loyal customer and you have 10 orders, starting at 10 orders, you'll get 5% off automatically. Like that's a heavily requested feature as well. And then some AI stuff I think is in the pipeline as well, like a really knowledgeable chatbot that kind of has knowledge into the part that you're uploading and can recommend the right material for your application. That's something that we're working on as well. But the number one thing is quoting times. That's really important for customers and the businesses that run AutoQuote3D. And that is the core offering of AutoQuote3D, fast quoting times. So we want to make sure that that's improved this year.
That's fantastic, and a fantastic roadmap, and I'm looking forward to all the features. Speed, of course, is absolutely important, like the way you're saying it, but I gotta say, even just looking back before AutoQuote3D, we would have to take that file from the customer, put it into the slicer, slice it, put that value of how big it is into our manually customized spreadsheet, get the price out and email the customer back. As fast as you can be, if you're doing it all day, it's still a couple minutes. And here we're talking, 30 to 40 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds for smaller parts. And we're saying that that's slow. So it's come a long way, but I think we've set the bar really high. And I think you're absolutely right. Once people get used to it, that instant quoting of 20 seconds, they're going to expect 5 seconds down the road.
Yep, 100%.
Fantastic. So any parting words from you, Felix, in terms of AutoQuote3D and what we can expect?
Yeah, no, I can say that if you're running a 3D printing business, definitely give AutoQuote a try. It's $15 You can try it for 1 month. It works, it doesn't, it doesn't. The other thing that I want to touch on is like, if you notice that AutoQuote3D goes 60% of the way for you, don't hesitate to email us. That's the really cool thing about the stage that we're at, is that every single customer that we have has impact on what we're working on. So if you're very vocal and you can communicate what it is you need, and we can abstract it so that it works for everybody else, you have a real say in where this software will be in a year from now. So I really encourage anybody that's thinking about it to just try it out. Of course.
And to quickly add my 2 cents in there, it's there's a little bit of difference between AutoQuote3D and some other software pieces where it's not a software company making software for the sake of having software. It's a bunch of 3D printing experts that have a very strong opinion on what would help other 3D printing experts and service bureaus out there do better in their business, make their business more efficient. And I think that is really what we're keeping an eye on when we're developing this product. It's not for the sake of just having software. It's critical in the 3D printing industry. And it's a very basic thing that everybody is going to use every day. So I think that's what we're going to focus on improving. And Felix, I want to really thank you for your time today and for your original inspiration to take the plunge and create AutoQuote3D.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. It's been a ride, and I can't wait to see where it ends.
All right, I think now I've got Jackie on the line. Jackie is, of course, our technical director over in our Vancouver office, and he's really the person who's in charge of running our AutoQuote3D widget throughout the entire operation, so including Vancouver and Mississauga. So Jackie, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. So I wanted to actually get a little bit of experience from your perspective on running AutoQuote3D for Shop3D and how you've kind of set that all up and basically your experiences with using the widget with our operation. So tell us a little bit about how you run our PTO print to order requests.
Yeah, so currently we have it set up really conveniently as 2 locations. So as you know, we have a physical store in both Vancouver and Mississauga, Ontario. So we run AutoQuote on basically 2 threads separately. So what that allows us to do is basically separate the orders from the different locations, and also set different prices, and also have different equipment set up. So with the 2 different locations, we have different materials available, we have different printers available. So it's really important for us to be able to separate all those things so that, if someone orders a part that we can't produce in Vancouver, then that causes a lot of communication problems with the customer, a lot more friction. So we want to make sure that we can customize each side to ensure that both we can essentially make the parts quickly in the right locations, and then people can choose as well. They can choose which side they want it on, and then we can produce those parts really quickly, efficiently. And the whole point of the AutoQuote system is to reduce friction on both the back end, how we create things, and for the customer. So by customizing these 2 locations, we're able to be a lot more efficient and a lot more hands-off on the manual quoting.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm looking at your screen and I'm really jealous because you got the new Form 4L back there, which is a lot of build volume for your SLA technology. We don't have that here. We do have the older 3L, but I think you actually get a lot more orders on your for printing on your 4L than we do on our 3L, right?
Yeah, we get a ton of printing on the 4L. It's really popular because I think, as you said, not a lot of people have access to a large SLA, and something so reliable and has access to such a great library of materials. It's a really popular machine right now. A lot of people already have standard FDM, standard SLA, but when it comes to larger SLA printers, that's a lot less common, and that's where people start to look for external third-party companies to be able to produce their parts for them.
Gotcha. And let me ask you about a practical experience. Since we've kind of separated into two locations and there's two different teams working on it, how did you? I guess you could assign different users to different teams. And what happens if you have one material on one side and one printer on the other? Like, how do you manage both of those locations? And if we have a third location down the line, how would you manage that also?
Yeah, so it's super easy. You can essentially just add a new company, and it shows up on the drop-down list. So you can actually just select whether it's Vancouver or Mississauga. So me as the overall manager, I can look at both stores. They have independent stats and they have independent printer and material setups. So you can manage all that stuff on the fly individually. And people can go in and check it out. So if somebody has access to both Vancouver and Mississauga locations, they can make quotes from either location. So in some odd cases where maybe we don't have a material available in Vancouver, Mississauga has that available, then they can actually just swap over, and then we can quote the job from the Mississauga side instead of the Vancouver, and vice versa, and then we can cross ship. It's not ideal that way, but that option is available so that we don't lose the customer because we don't have that material in stock.
Yeah, and looking at some of the stats, you can actually tell as a manager which team is doing better, what their conversion rates are, and how many orders they're doing, and kind of gauge the capacity in both locations, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's really robust stats, so you can track the materials that you're using in both locations. Maybe you can see different trends. We see different wants and needs from both sides. So we can sort of gear towards different needs based on the location. So that's really helpful. And you asked about, if we had a third location, what would we do there? We would essentially just add a new location and then add the printers available at that location. And then, we're up and running. It's in the same drop-down list. Everything's within the same system. So it's super easy to do that. It would take 20 minutes to do.
Fantastic. And, we talked a little bit about with Felix in terms of automation and the automation level. And we talked about how, we gave him a lot of advice or at least recommendations in terms of having an assisted. So I think people know that we're using the assisted level. But let me ask you, why did you choose assisted versus either full auto or manual?
Yeah, so assisted was one feature that we really wanted in there because we do a lot of custom work. So for our process, not everything's super automated. So we get customers from all walks of life, from people just wanting a simple, fidget spinner type of thing to people wanting, 100 parts for their machines. So because of that huge range of operation, we want more control overall. So when the quote comes in, we want to be able to review it and then, sometimes decide if we want to take it or if we want to maybe recommend a different material. There's just so many things that can happen and so many different customers and needs that we want the power to basically look at the job start coming in and then approve it or send some revisions or decline it based on materials needs and all these other things. So assisted gives you the most control, I would say, but at the same time taking away a lot of the monotonous work. So if someone submits like a very simple basic job, that can just be fully auto. You can just hit OK, and basically the whole quoting process is automated, and then the management of the print job is fairly automated as well. And that's the whole point of the system. It takes a lot of the manual work away. But when a big job comes in, you'd want to have a lot more hands-on that, and you can basically manually take that over and communicate with the customer a lot more before accepting like a really large or like numerous part job.
Now, as a manager of tech, you know that workflow and consistency is always being challenged, as in, hey, one day you are running out of certain material, another day a certain printer is down. How do you use AutoQuote3D to kind of help you manage, what your capacity is and also what materials available? Like, for example, if red PLA is sold out or gone for some reason, or one of your machines goes down or is fully occupied, how does AutoQuote3D help you manage capacity and workflow?
Yeah, so it's really easy. when you set up your printers and your materials, you would have already set up all these profiles for every printer and material. So it has the sizing and everything. So if you, for instance, run out of one material, you can essentially just disable that material, and then it'll no longer show up as the quoting process where people can choose that option. So you can just, manually disable it for a short time, and then once it's back in stock, you can just enable it again. So it's really convenient and it's real time, so people can't check out accidentally with something that you don't have in stock. And if someone does and you just didn't notice that you didn't have the stock, you can always go into the quote, and then you can always send a revised quote with a different material and then get them to accept it instead. There's a really cool feature where when the job comes in, it's not fully accepted yet unless you choose to accept it. And this allows you a short moment of checking the file to make sure it's both printable and the materials available, or you can hit modify and then send a revision to them so they can accept that instead.
And I don't know if you know on top of your head, but what would you say is the ratio of accepted versus rejected orders? And this could be rough, but what are the reasons why you would reject something?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think off the top of my head, I would say 70% is accepted, which I feel is quite high in general. We don't get a lot of people that are submitting random things. The ones that are rejected usually are people who are obviously new to 3D printing, and they've sent in something that's just completely unreasonable to print, like really thin walls or no volume at all. So those ones we'll essentially just reject them, but we'll also send an email and be like, hey, these are the reasons that your part might not be printable. Maybe you want to look at repairing your model. But most of the time, it actually is accepted. I think by the time people choose all the materials and everything, they have a reasonable understanding of 3D printing, that they've chosen the right ones. We have some customers that submit the job and then kind of email us and be like, hey, I don't really know what I'm choosing here. Can you help me? Or people have called in as well and be like, hey, I'm doing your quoting system, but I'm not 100% sure what system I should choose. And then we just kind of walk them through the selection process on the call. And, even that, it saves a lot of time. Instead of sort of explaining the whole thing ad hoc to every single person, you're at least in front and they can choose, okay, pick SLA for this part and then pick a color, and then they hit submit and then they can pay. So even if it is a consultation type of process, it does save a lot of time because all the options are in front of them right there.
Have there been any situations where you've reviewed a customer's submission and sent it back and say, hey, I think we should reorient this or do this instead or replace it with this material and we can save you some money? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that happens quite a bit, and that's one of the main reasons why we use assisted mode, so that we can capture those and then save the customer money. Our whole purpose is to build a good relationship, get return customers. So a lot of times people will send in giant SLA files, and it'll be really expensive, and then we'll take a look at the file. Sometimes we'll reorientate it, and then maybe we may hollow it out and then send them a revised quote and be like, hey, this would be a lot more efficient if we hollow it out or if we change the material. Or, in some cases, we'll be like, hey, this part will be very weak if we print it in the FDM process. Maybe you want to consider doing an SLA process. And usually the customers will be very thankful that, if we've reached out, reviewed their product and revised their options.
Fantastic. And I think that good customer service is, key to, what we want to do at Chops3D. But I want to ask, with the system, has it brought you more customers doing PTOs and more interest and more, I guess, engagement within the PTO process?
Yeah, I think it's made it a little bit easier for people to just throw a quote. So previously there used to be a lot of people that would just call and be like, hey, I'm interested in getting a 3D print, and then we would basically go through the whole process of explaining it a little bit if they're new, and then they would send a file, and then we would be like, oh, this is going to be way too expensive, or it just doesn't work. What happens now is they'll actually just drop their part into the quoting system, and if it's way too expensive, they'll kind of filter themselves out right away. So we see a lot less of the calls that are just not going to be a good fit. But we do see more calls of people asking about, hey, what material is this? And, getting a little bit more information. So I would say we're getting a little bit more qualified leads throughout, and then we're getting more random people going in and sending a job. So we'll just see like for the easy jobs, they'll just appear on our thing. We hit accept and we print the job, and we see new people like that all the time. So we do see a slight increase in new users and a sort of filtered out of the users that are not a good fit, which I think is the whole point of AutoQuote, and it's been fantastic.
And what about some potential customers that, let's say, maybe uploaded a quote but never gone through the whole full checkout process because they didn't commit to the print, or they didn't like the price or something? Do you do anything with that list of leads that comes through that for abandoned checkouts?
Yeah, for sure. All the abandoned checkouts go into this handy list that we can actually reach out to again. So if we're low in capacity, we can basically reach out, look at some of the files that are maybe someone submitted like 3 different files, and you could kind of piece together a story, like maybe they've been having difficulty or they're trying to find a good price. Those people, we can reach out to them and be like, hey, are you trying to look for something specific, or is there an issue that you're having? And then we can kind of go through and try and convert those like lost sales, if you will, or just troubleshoot to see, hey, what's up? Maybe they're unhappy about the pricing, and then you can adjust that as you go. But yeah, the list of unfilled orders or quotes are also still very useful. It's also useful seeing what people are uploading, what they're looking to print. So you have some industry intel of like what are people attempting to print, what's popular at the moment. Is it more engineering stuff? Is it more architecture stuff? Like what's happening in the industry?
So, change is always a scary thing for any business. So I want to get your take on this. Do you have any advice for someone who is doing service bureau work, who may be very skeptical of switching from their manual, very refined Excel spreadsheet and going to AutoQuote3D? What kind of advice, would you give them to maybe take the jump, or, maybe not?
I would say, take the plunge for sure. For us, it's saved so much time, and it's time that it's not really useful. So, for the general quoting, we're saving upwards of like 80% of our time, just the touch points with the customer. Because previously what happens is they'll reach out, we'll have to manually, talk to them and, send emails back and forth and manage their job, put them in the quoting system, hit the slice and then figure out what the number is, and just to find out that they're like, oh, it's too expensive. So in those kind of jobs, it's saving upwards of 80% of the time of, not that valuable, kind of work. So it's really automating the really monotonous stuff, and it just allows you more time to consult with the ones that are maybe higher quantities, higher value work. So it just saves a ton of time for basically everyone involved. Even job management, once the part goes through in your payment system, it goes into a separate category where you can flow it into, it's currently printing, and it sends an email when it's currently printing. Whenever you change the status, AutoQuote will automatically send an email and be like, hey, it's printing now. And then once it's done printing, you can change it to, hey, it's ready for pickup or it's ready for shipping. And you don't actually even have to open an email client. So even that, you're saving like a few seconds, a few minutes here and there, but it's just so much more convenient and so much more efficient for us to manage that we can focus on the more important things, like making sure the part comes out right, cleaning up all the supports and all that stuff. There's just way better time to be spent instead of like going back through emails, slicing, and plugging Excel sheets and everything. The algorithm is very robust, so it's simple enough that it's relatively easy to understand, and you can change it so that there's a curve. If it's a big part and it's a lot of weight, it'll be less expensive if they put more stuff. You can customize your startup fees. So we've been able to integrate our costing system into AutoQuote without trouble, without feeling like, oh, we're not as robust in terms of our costing structure.
Okay, I think I know the answer to this, but if AutoQuote3D was somehow not available again after today, It's not the case. We're just hypothetical situation. If I turn off your AutoQuote 3D and you have to go back to doing things the manual way, what do you think you'll lose from a customer experience standpoint, or how would you have to limit your business in order to compensate for that loss of automation?
Well, I'd lose my sanity first of all. I think losing AutoQuote would increase a lot of the workload on our people, basically. What's the most costly about it is it's distracting. So when you like printing is not our like 100% of what we do. If that is, then maybe it's a little bit different. But it's if a print comes in, it distracts our people, and they have to start to respond to emails, do different tasks, start a different print. So it just injects all these interruptions into our workflow, into our day-to-day, so that everyone is sort of a little bit more stressed, a little bit more on edge, and it's just tasks that you feel like you should be automated. Like plugging things to an Excel sheet is not exactly fun and useful. You'd rather be like printing or setting up stuff. So I think the biggest hurt would be actually the sanity and sort of the feeling of you're wasting a little bit of time on every single part of the steps. That would be the biggest hurt. But it would on the bottom line, it will use more hours for our people to contact the customer more. We'd be taking more calls that could really just be an automated thing, or people could just read online. We'd be accepting or rejecting a lot more of the very basic questions. You'd be like, hey, I want to print this helmet, and it's going to be like $500, and they're obviously not going to accept that. But there's no way to really mitigate that without a system like AutoQuote, without someone sort of touching that directly.
Absolutely. I, for one, will never, ever, ever miss that call that says, hey, do you have my quote yet? I sent the file to you 30 minutes ago. I will never, ever miss that. And that is absolutely sanity going out the window, even after just 24 hours without AutoQuote. So, Jackie, I want to thank you for your time today. That's been great insight for someone who's actually operating on the system, using it every day, and driving business forward with AutoQuote 3D. So thank you for joining me, and have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
All right, well, we've taken you through what the customer sees on getting automatic quotes for your business. We've also gone through the configuration and how we price our prints to perfection. And we've talked to the founder and also Jackie, who's used this system for his business for a while. So I think that wraps up everything we need to tell you about AutoQuote and what it can do for your business. So if you've signed up for the webinar today, thank you for listening to us, learning all about AutoQuote 3D. We'll actually be sending you a code so that you can try the software for yourself on a trial basis. If you're interested in reaching out to us, definitely contact my team. We'd love to have that conversation with you. Again, my name is Ken from Shop3D. Thanks for joining us.